So now that we've gathered everything we need, we're almost ready. Before we start stitching, we first need to prepare our project and set it up. Firstly, I want to talk about fabric. There are a couple of important things you'll need to do to prepare your fabric for stitching. There's arguments for and against pre-washing your fabric before using it for stitchery, and of course your choice will mainly depend on what sort of fabric you're using and whether or not the project you're stitching will be regularly used or more of a display piece. I personally choose not to pre-wash my fabric, as these days manufacturers only use a minimal amount of sizing chemicals in patchworking and stitchery fabrics, as they know that most consumers won't pre-wash before use. The minimal sizing chemicals that may be present provides a smooth and crisp fabric which makes stitching, cutting and construction easier and leaves a sharper finish to the project in the end. You'll definitely want to give your fabric a good press. When I'm doing this, I'll also add a good spritz of the Heaven Sent spray starch. By doing this, I'm creating a nice clean and crisp surface to work, and it smells great. There's several different ways to transfer a design onto your fabric, whether it's holding your design up to the window, working over a light box, direct tracing your pattern, or using dressmaker's carbon. When I'm tracing my patterns, I use a SoLine styler. This is a water erasable marker with a ceramic rolling ballpoint which gives smooth movement across fabrics without snagging or damaging the weave. The 0.8mm point gives a fine line that doesn't bleed and gives an even laydown of ink. The majority of my patterns come with the iron-on transfers because if you're anything like me, there's no time for tracing and you just want to get stitching. You'll see that the iron-on transfers are a reflected version of the pattern, and you need to lay these face down onto your fabric and press with a hot dry iron for the image to transfer, being sure not to let the pattern move and create distorted transfer lines. Depending on the type of project and how my project will be used or displayed, I might use a stabilizer. If I am going to use a stabilizer, I'll use a lightweight iron-on interfacing. You can see that this interfacing is extremely lightweight, and so will follow the drape of the fabric that I'm stitching on nicely without creating any bulkiness. The stabilizer will not only create stability for my project, but when used on lighter coloured fabrics and linens, it will also reduce the chance of my thread ends from showing through at the front later. Once you've transferred your design and ironed on your stabilizer, you're almost ready to start stitching. Once you've got your design in your hoop, of course. Your hoop is made up of 2 rings, one slightly smaller than the other. You'll want to loosen the screw at the top of your hoop and pop out the smaller hoop in the centre. Take your smaller hoop and lay on a flat surface before laying your fabric over the top, focusing on the part of the project that you're going to stitch and centering it as best you can. Now take the larger outside part of the hoop and slowly slide it over the fabric and the smaller hoop, essentially locking the fabric in between the two. You may need to loosen the screw in order to make it easier to slide over. Tighten your screw tight enough that the fabric won't move, but not so tight that the weave of the fabric is stretched or caused to damage. The best way to check the tension of your fabric is to see if you can bounce your fingers off of it, similar to a drum. We're nearly ready to start, now we just need to get our thread organised. You'll first want to cut your thread at a workable length. Experts will usually tell you that a good measurement is from your fingertips to your elbow, but I usually cut my thread a little longer than that. If your threads have been stored around bobbins or tightly packed, I usually run my thread through my fingertips a few times just to take the memory out of it. This will also stop your thread from knotting as often as it otherwise might. Tease out the number of threads that you intend to use and slowly pull them away from the main strand. You'll see that there is a slight twist to the thread, so pulling them slowly is important to reduce the chance of tangling. Traditionally, you will find that most needlework requires using 2 strands of cotton, unless otherwise noted in the pattern. You'll find that more strands of cotton and larger threads will create bulkier looking designs, while less strands create a finer looking design. We're now going to thread our needle with our 2 strands of cotton. You may find that using a needle threader at this point is helpful, however most people will just lick their threads to make them stick together before threading them through the eye of the needle. Once you've threaded your needle, pull the thread through far enough so that it won't unthread itself while you're stitching. I'll usually pull mine about half the length of the opposite side to give myself plenty of room to work with. To finish, tie a small single knot in the end of your thread. And now you're ready to start stitching. Thanks for watching.